The wind carried a bitter taste of dust and iron as Clara Wynne stumbled through the center of Red Rock, clutching a small, trembling boy to her chest. His eyes were wide, reflecting both hunger and fear, while the townsfolk gawked with a mixture of curiosity and cruelty. The wooden gallows at the edge of Main Street creaked ominously, swaying like a pendulum in the relentless sun. Whispers of outrage followed her. Carried through the streets, Clara had done only one thing. She had given a loaf of bread to a starving child. To the people of Red Rock, that simple act was rebellion. How dare she feed the wretches while our coffers run low? The mayor had bellowed in the square yesterday, and now the town had decided that punishment must be swift and public. The air smelled of scorched wood and sweat, the heavy scent of fear clinging to everyone gathered. Horses stamped impatiently nearby, their hooves kicking up clouds of fine red dust. The townspeople's faces were tight with anger, sunburned, and lined from years of hard labor, yet twisted by a sense of self-righteousness. Some held pitchforks, others rifles that glinted dangerously in the morning light. Clara's hands were raw, blistered from years of work in the fields and kitchens of Red Rock, yet she refused to let go of the boy. "It's just food," she whispered, trying to soothe him. The child clutched at her skirt, silent, tears streaking his dirt-smudged cheeks. He had no family, no protection, only Clara, whose bravery had just made her a target. The sheriff arrived, his leather boots thudding against the boardwalk. He was a small man with a large mustache, his eyes darting nervously between Clara and the mob. "Step aside," he muttered, though his voice lacked authority. The mayor laughed, his chest puffing out like a rooster's. "Justice will be served, and no outsider or timid lawman will stop it." Suddenly, a sharp whistle cut through the tense morning, slicing across the chatter and clatter. Heads turned. Dust rose on the horizon as a lone figure appeared, riding at a calm but commanding pace. His horse moved with fluid precision, hooves striking the earth in a rhythm that seemed to echo in the hearts of the crowd. The man was a striking presence, muscular, bare-chested, skin bronzed by the sun, long black hair tied back with leather strips, and necklaces of carved bone and beads swinging across his chest. His eyes were dark, steady, and unflinching, scanning the townspeople like a hawk watching prey. Whispers ran through the crowd. "It's Cale Thunderhawk," someone murmured. Legends spoke of him as a wanderer, a protector, a shadow that appeared where injustice reigned. Clara's heart leapt. She had heard the stories, the fearless warrior who struck fear into the hearts of the cruel and defended those who could not defend themselves. He reined his horse to a stop, the ground trembling beneath its hooves. "Unhand her," Cale's voice boomed, deep and resonant, carrying a weight the mayor could not ignore. The air seemed to shift as the townspeople froze, the sunlight glinting off the bronze of his skin and the sharp angles of his face. Sheriff hesitated, his hand twitching toward his revolver, unsure whether to obey or resist. Clara's grip on the boy tightened. The rope dangling from the gallows swayed with a sinister rhythm, catching the sun and throwing patterns of shadow across the ground. Every second stretched, heavy with dread. The wind whipped dust into Clara's eyes, and the tongue of fear clung to her tongue like metallic ash. Cale dismounted with effortless grace, boots crunching in the dirt, and stepped forward. "No harm will come to her," he said, his gaze slicing through the mob, unyielding. "Feeding a child is no crime, and anyone who believes otherwise will answer to me." The mayor's face turned red with rage. "Who gives you the right?" he spat. Cale's eyes did not waver. "Right? It's called justice," he said, his voice like rolling thunder over the plains. The townspeople shifted nervously, whispers turning to murmurs of doubt. For the first time, the certainty of their cruelty faltered. Clara held the boy close, feeling a strange mix of hope and fear as the warrior man approached. Every muscle in the crowd tensed. Something was about to change in Red Rock, something that none of them could have imagined. And then Cale extended his hand, signaling the beginning of a reckoning that would echo through the town for generations. The wind that had swept through Red Rock moments ago now seemed to hold its breath. Cale dismounted slowly, letting the leather reins slide through his strong hands. His bare chest glistened with sweat, each muscle tense, each movement deliberate, while his dark eyes swept over the mob. The sun hit the bone necklaces around his neck, making them gleam like tiny daggers. The townspeople shuffled uncomfortably, unsure where to look, unsure if they were facing a man or a force of nature. Clara pressed the boy closer, his small body shaking against her side. Who is he?" the child whispered, barely audible. Over the groans of the crowd. Clara's lips trembled, but she did not answer. She knew legends were rarely this close, and certainly never this real. The mayor stepped forward, chest puffed, hand twitching near the revolver at his hip. "Step aside, stranger. This is Red Rock, and we make our own law," he barked. But Cale's stance did not shift. He did not flinch. His voice, when it came, rumbled like distant thunder across the arid plains. "You will not touch her," he said simply. "She has done no wrong. Feeding a child is no crime. And anyone who moves against her moves against me." The mayor's jaw tightened, and the crowd murmured uneasily. No one had ever seen him challenged like this. Cale's presence seemed to draw the very air into silence, the dust settling as if even nature recognized the authority in his voice. One of the townsmen, a tall, wiry man with a rifle slung over his shoulder, scoffed. "And who's going to stop me? You?" His laughter cracked like dry wood. Cale's gaze snapped to him, and the man's grin faltered instantly. There was a weight in Cale's eyes, a silent promise that was older than the town itself. Clara's fingers dug into the boy's shoulders, nails pressing into his soft skin. She swallowed hard as Cale stepped closer to the gallows, each movement slow and precise, deliberate in its intimidation. His long hair swayed with the wind, and the necklaces of bone and beads rattled faintly with each step. Like a warning drumbeat, the sheriff shifted his stance, uncertain now, glancing between Cale and the mayor. He had always thought of himself as the law, but now he felt insignificant, as though the warrior man carried the weight of true justice in his shadow. Cale stopped just a few feet from the gallows. He bent slightly, meeting Clara's eyes. "It's all right," he murmured, his voice softer now, but no less commanding. "You did what had to be done. Hold fast." The boy sniffled, hiding his face against Clara's chest, and for the first time since morning felt a glimmer of safety. The mayor lunged forward, red-faced and furious, his hand reaching for Clara, but Cale moved like a striking eagle, placing himself between them with a single fluid motion. His stance was wide, powerful, unyielding, radiating confidence that made even the bravest townsman hesitate. "You will not harm her," Cale said again, slower this time, each word deliberate, measured, like a hammer striking stone. "I swear it by the spirits of the plains, by every child who has ever cried for food, and by every woman who has ever faced injustice." "Step back." Murmurs of doubt ran through the crowd. Some men lowered their weapons. Others exchanged uneasy glances. Even the mayor hesitated, beads of sweat trickling down his forehead, his face pale in the harsh sunlight. Finally, after a tense heartbeat, Cale spoke once more, his voice carrying over the dust-choked silence. "Red Rock has a choice today. Continue in cruelty or choose to honor what is right. I will wait, but I will not bend. Decide wisely." The wind picked up again, whirling dust into the air, catching the sunlight in glittering streaks. Clara felt the boy relax slightly, his fingers clutching hers. Cale's presence was like a shield, a force field of courage and justice that no mob could penetrate. The townspeople began to murmur, some whispering apologies, others too afraid to speak. Clara's heart pounded in her chest. For the first time, she dared to hope that the unjust hanging would not take place. And above it all, Cale remained, unwavering, the embodiment of strength, honor, and the promise that no innocent life would be destroyed while he stood watch. For Red Rock, the day had turned. What had begun as a sentence of cruelty now hovered in the balance, waiting for the courage of the few to tip the scales. And Cale, silent, powerful, and unyielding, held the weight of that balance in his hands. Night fell over Red Rock like a heavy cloak, casting the town in a deep, uneasy shadow. The sun had long vanished behind jagged mesas, leaving only streaks of crimson and violet across the horizon. Clara sat on the wooden steps of her small cabin. The boy curled against her side, both of them shivering not from the cold, but from the lingering terror of the day. The distant silhouettes of the gallows and empty streets seemed more sinister under the moonlight. Cale sat across from them, the firelight flickering across his bronze skin and the bone necklaces around his neck. The wind teased the long black strands of his hair, making them dance like living shadows. He sharpened a knife with quiet precision, each rasp of metal against stone echoing softly in the still night. Every so often, his dark eyes flicked toward the town, alert, scanning for any hint of trouble. Clara could see the tension in his posture, the quiet readiness of a predator who had faced danger countless times before. The boy, timid and still wide-eyed, whispered, "Will they come back for me?" Clara hugged him tighter, tears threatening to spill. "Not while Cale is here," she said, though even she wasn't certain. The stories of the warrior man were legendary, but legends alone couldn't calm a child's fear. Cale's voice broke the silence, low and deliberate. "Red Rock will test us tonight. The mayor and his men are angry, but we will not wait for them to strike blindly. You must stay here, hidden." His eyes softened as they met Clara's. "You did the right thing. Protecting this boy, that is more than bravery, it is honor." The wind picked up again, carrying with it the faint scent of horses, dust, and wood smoke from the town. From the darkness came soft, suspicious footsteps, someone moving cautiously, trying not to be seen. Cale's hand went to his belt, fingers brushing the hilt of a hidden blade. He rose, stepping silently toward the shadows, every muscle in. His body coiled like a spring. Clara's heart pounded. "Who is it?" she whispered. Cale didn't answer. He was already disappearing into the night, the firelight glinting off his bone necklaces like stars in the darkness. The boy clutched at Clara's shirt, too afraid to move. Minutes stretched into an eternity. Then the sound of a voice, low and trembling, came from the edge of the clearing. It's just me," whispered a townsman, stepping into the light, hands raised. His eyes darted nervously between the cabin and the looming shadow of Cale. The man trembled, as if the air itself carried a weight of judgment. Cale returned to the cabin, silent but imposing, and the townsman stammered out a confession. Small crimes, petty grievances, fear of reprisal, but nothing of the courage to harm Clara or the boy. Cale's gaze didn't waver. "Leave now and do not return tonight," he said, voice firm. "Tell the others what you have seen." The man bolted, vanishing into the darkness, leaving Clara and the boy alone with the fire and the quiet sentinel. For a moment, the town seemed almost peaceful, the tension in the air settling into a fragile calm. Clara breathed deeply, feeling the warmth of the fire and the reassuring presence of Cale. She had never felt so protected, and yet so acutely aware of how precarious their safety was. Cale sat back down, resuming his careful watch over the town. Red Rock's heart is heavy with fear and cruelty, he said softly, but not all hearts are lost. Tonight we wait, and tomorrow we act. His eyes reflected the firelight, burning with resolve and a quiet fury that spoke of justice. Yet to come. The boy, finally feeling a measure of safety, drifted into an uneasy sleep against Clara's chest. Clara's eyes scanned the horizon, the moon casting long shadows across the desert plains. Somewhere beyond the hills, the mayor and his followers plotted, unaware that the balance of power had shifted. Cale was not just a man, he was a warning, a promise, a force that could not be ignored. And as the night deepened, Red Rock held its breath. Every creaking signpost, every rustling leaf, every whisper of wind seemed magnified, pregnant with the possibility of confrontation. The town would not rest easily tonight, nor would its people forget the warrior man standing vigil, the protector of innocence, whose presence alone could silence fear and command justice. The first hints of dawn stretched over Red Rock, painting the wooden buildings in shades of amber and blood red. The town seemed quieter than usual, but beneath the surface, tension crackled like a hidden fire. Word had spread quickly. A warrior had arrived, a man who would not tolerate cruelty. And the mayor, humiliated and furious, would not let the insult stand. Inside the saloon, the mayor paced like a caged animal, his boots thudding against the worn wooden floor. Around him, a dozen of the roughest men in town gathered, eyes glinting with anger and fear. "She can't get away with this," he hissed. "That woman, that boy, and that stranger. We'll show them who rules Red Rock." Outside, Cale moved silently, shadowed by the rising sun. He had stayed the night at Clara's cabin, keeping vigil over the boy and the woman. Every creaking board, every distant whisper of boots on the street reached him with the clarity of a hawk's keen sight. His bare chest shone with sweat, muscles taut, necklaces of carved bone clinking faintly. He had anticipated this morning. Danger had a way of finding Red Rock, but he was ready. Clara and the boy watched from the cabin window, the fire from the hearth casting long flickering shadows on the walls. The boy's small fingers clutched hers tightly, his eyes wide. "Will they come for us?" he whispered. Clara swallowed hard. "They will, but he'll protect us," she replied, glancing at Cale standing tall in the courtyard. Like a sentinel forged from stone and sunlight. At the edge of town, the mayor and his mob gathered. Their horses pawed at the dry ground, dust rising like a red mist around them. Some carried rifles, others brandished clubs and knives, their faces twisted with anger and resentment. The mayor raised his hand. "Move!" he barked, and the mob surged forward, boots and hooves pounding the dusty street. Cale's eyes narrowed, dark and unyielding. He stepped into the open, a living wall of muscle and determination. The mob froze, sensing the force radiating from him. He raised his hands slowly, palms open, as if daring them to strike. The necklaces on his chest rattled softly, a subtle warning. Even the sun seemed to pause, glinting off the bronze of his skin, highlighting the lines of strength and the unspoken promise of retribution. The first man swung a rifle, but Cale's reflexes were lightning fast. He caught the stock mid-swing, twisting and flipping it aside with a precision born of countless battles. The mob hesitated, unsure whether to attack or retreat. Dust rose in spirals around Cale's feet as he shifted, ready to intercept any strike, his bare chest gleaming in the sun. Clara's voice trembled as she whispered to the boy, "Stay back. Just stay back." She watched as Cale moved like a force of nature, stepping between every potential threat, his dark eyes flashing with a controlled fury. The mayor's face turned red with rage. He barked orders, but no one dared act without Cale noticing. The warrior's presence alone commanded obedience and fear. Minutes stretched into an unbearable tension, every heartbeat echoing through the empty street. Then Cale spoke, voice calm but cutting through the noise like a sharpened blade. Red Rock, listen. Your leader has brought shame and cruelty. I will not let harm come to the innocent. Step back and no blood will be spilled today. The mayor's lip curled, but he faltered. The men exchanged nervous glances, sweat beading on their foreheads. Under the relentless sun, Cale's gaze was unwavering, unrelenting. The sheer force of his presence, the combination of skill, power, and righteousness, was enough to unnerve even the most hardened of Red Rock's men. Slowly, the mob began to step back, muttering and hesitant, the fire of aggression dimming under the shadow of Cale's authority. Clara exhaled quietly, relief washing over her, though she remained tense. The warrior's eyes never left the mayor, a warning silent yet clear. Any further act of cruelty would be met with unyielding justice. Red Rock's first battle of the morning had been won not by bullets or brute force, but by the presence of a man who embodied courage, honor, and the promise of protection for those too weak to defend themselves. The town would remember this day and the lesson of Cale for as long as its dusty streets remained under the relentless sun. The sun had climbed higher, turning Red Rock into a furnace of heat and tension. The mob, frustrated and humiliated, had not retreated completely. Murmurs of mutiny spread like wildfire, and the mayor's fury had reached a boiling point. He was determined to reclaim control, and he would not be stopped by a single man. No matter how imposing, Cale stood at the edge of the street, the dust swirling around his bare feet. Every muscle in his body was taut, his bronzed skin gleaming in the harsh sunlight, and his long black hair whipped around him with the wind. The bone necklaces around his neck clinked softly, each sound like a drumbeat warning of the storm to come. He watched the mob, calculating each move, every step, every twitch of their fingers on weapons. Clara and the boy huddled inside the cabin, peering through the cracks in the walls. Fear gripped them both, yet there was a glimmer of hope. Cale had not faltered once. His presence alone seemed to slow the mob, forcing them to think twice before acting. The first attack came suddenly. A tall man with a rifle raised it, aiming directly at the warrior. In a blur of motion, Cale sidestepped, grabbed the barrel, and twisted it aside with fluid precision. The weapon clanged against a post, harmless now. The man staggered back, eyes wide in shock, as Cale's gaze pinned him like a predator to its prey. Another mob member lunged with a knife, but Cale caught the wrist mid-air, spinning the attacker and sending him crashing into a pile of crates. The boy gasped, and Clara's hands went to her mouth, heart hammering. The warrior moved with a lethal grace, defending without hesitation, blocking each strike and neutralizing threats without unnecessary violence. Cale's eyes swept the mob again. "Step back," he warned, voice calm but carrying the weight of a desert storm. "Leave now, and no harm will come to any of you. Resist, and you will regret it." The mayor roared, swinging a club, but Cale anticipated the move. He sidestepped, grabbing the club and twisting it from the mayor's hands, throwing it across the street. The mob froze, unsure if they dared advance further. Dust kicked up in clouds as Cale shifted his weight, muscles rippling, ready to strike. Again, Clara whispered to the boy, "He's not just strong, he's unstoppable." The boy nodded, wide-eyed, too frightened to speak. From the cabin, the sound of pounding hearts and whispered prayers mixed with the clatter of the confrontation outside. Cale moved like a storm across the dusty street, each step measured, each movement precise. A man lunged with a rope, intending to trap him, but Cale leapt aside, spinning gracefully, and the rope wrapped around a post instead. The warrior's presence was magnetic and terrifying all at once, a perfect blend of raw power and calculated skill. The mayor, panting and humiliated, called for retreat, but Cale's dark eyes followed them, unyielding. "This town will not be ruled by fear," he said. "Remember this day. Let cruelty and greed take root no longer." The mob faltered, then slowly began to disperse, murmurs of shame and fear spreading among them. Some men lowered their heads. Others exchanged nervous glances, unwilling to challenge Cale any further. Dust rose in spirals around the warrior, sunlight glinting off his bronzed skin, and the bone necklaces dangling across his chest. When the last of the mob had disappeared, down a side street, Cale turned toward Clara and the boy. Sweat ran down his back, but his posture remained steady, unbroken. "You are safe for now," he said, his voice quieter, more reassuring. "But Red Rock will need more than courage from you to survive the days ahead." Clara exhaled deeply, clutching the boy close. "Thank you," she whispered. I don't know how to repay you." Cale shook his head. "No repayment is needed. Protect each other and honor what is right. That is enough." His gaze swept the town one last time before he stepped back toward the shadows, ready for whatever else the day or the town might throw at them. For Red Rock, the streets were quiet once more, but the memory of Cale's strength and courage lingered in the dust, in the sweat of fear, and in the hearts of all who had witnessed him. By late afternoon, Red Rock simmered under the relentless sun, its dusty streets quiet except for the occasional whistle of wind through the empty buildings. Clara and the boy had retreated to her cabin, both still shaken by the morning's confrontation. Yet Cale remained outside, scanning the horizon with a predator's focus, alert to any movement or threat. His long black hair glistened with sweat, necklaces of bone and beads clinking softly as he moved, muscles taut and ready. Clara wiped the sweat from her brow and glanced at the boy. "Do you think they'll come back?" she asked, voice trembling. The child shook his head, too afraid to speak. Cale, overhearing, stepped closer. "They may," he said quietly. "But fear is temporary. Courage endures." A shadow moved at the edge of the town, and Cale stiffened. From behind a ruined fence emerged an elderly woman, hunched and cloaked in tattered fabric. Her eyes were sharp despite her frailty, and she carried a small satchel that jingled faintly with every step. Clara instinctively stepped in front of the boy. Cale's gaze narrowed. "Who comes unbidden to Red Rock?" he demanded. The woman's voice quavered but carried a strange authority. "I bring knowledge," she said. "The mayor hides something that could destroy this town and all who live here if it remains buried." Clara frowned, confused. "What do you mean?" she asked, clutching the boy closer. The woman's eyes flicked toward Cale. "You protect them, don't you? Then listen well. Beneath the mayor's office, there is a chest locked and hidden. Inside is proof of his deceit, his corruption, and his greed. The town suffers because of it, yet he will not share it willingly." Cale's stance stiffened, muscles coiling beneath bronzed skin. The bone necklaces around his neck rattled faintly in the wind. He scanned the horizon, noting the stillness of the town, the silence that seemed pregnant with unseen threats. "Then we retrieve it," he said, voice low and commanding. "Tonight." As dusk fell, Red Rock took on an eerie glow. Shadows stretched across the wooden facades, and the wind whispered through the streets like a ghostly warning. Cale led Clara and the boy silently toward the mayor's office. His bare feet moved with the precision of a predator, each step calculated, every sense alert. The boy clung to Clara, trembling but trusting the warrior completely. The mayor's office loomed ahead, its windows dark, though the faint glow of lamplight seeped through cracks in the shutters. Cale motioned for Clara to stay back. He pressed his hand against the door, feeling the vibrations, sensing the hidden locks within. With expert hands, he found a concealed latch beneath the desk and clicked it open. The chest inside was small, but solid, covered in dust. Its iron lock rusted yet still intact. The woman's warning echoed in Clara's mind as Cale opened the chest. Inside were documents, letters, and contracts that revealed the mayor's betrayal, stolen land deeds, forged signatures, and accounts proving that he had siphoned money from the town while punishing those who dared show compassion. The evidence was undeniable. Cale held the documents up, letting the fading light glint off the edges. Clara gasped. This proves everything," she whispered. The boy's eyes widened, a mix of awe and fear. Cale's voice was quiet but firm. "Now, Red Rock will see justice. The truth cannot be hidden any longer." Suddenly, a noise, a creak of the floorboard alerted them. Cale's muscles tensed instantly, his body a coiled spring ready to strike. The mayor had returned, unaware that his secret had been unearthed. Dust swirled around Cale's feet, the last rays of sunlight catching his bronzed skin and the intricate tribal jewelry on his chest. Every shadow seemed alive, every heartbeat echoing the inevitability of confrontation. Clara clutched the boy, fear and anticipation mingling in her chest. The next moments would determine the fate of Red Rock, the innocent and the corrupt. Cale, silent and unyielding, stood as both shield and reckoning, ready to unleash the consequences of hidden truth on those who had ruled through fear. The town's darkest hour was approaching, and none would forget the warrior man who had returned, not just to protect, but to expose, confront, and transform. Night had fully settled over Red Rock, cloaking the town in a tense, silvered shadow. The streets, once bustling with anger and fear, were now eerily silent, save for the whisper of wind over the wooden boardwalks. Inside the mayor's office, the last traces of lamplight flickered against the walls, illuminating a chest that had revealed the mayor's treachery. Outside, Cale stood like a sentinel, muscles coiled, his shirtless, bronzed frame glinting in the moonlight, long black hair whipping in the wind, and bone necklaces and leather armbands catching the dim light. Clara held the boy close, heart pounding. They both knew this night would decide Red Rock's fate. The mayor had returned, unaware that his secrets had been discovered, and Cale would not let injustice stand any longer. The mayor burst through the door, eyes wide with fury and fear. "What have you done?" he shouted, brandishing a pistol. Cale's dark eyes never wavered. He took a single step forward, and the air seemed to vibrate with authority. "The truth is not yours to hide," Cale said, his voice deep and commanding, carrying across the still night. "Red Rock will no longer suffer under fear and greed." The mayor fired, but Cale was already moving. In a blur of strength and precision, he deflected the shot with the butt of his forearm, the bullet sparking harmlessly against a wooden beam. Muscles rippling, Cale advanced, calm and unrelenting, each step measured, radiating control and raw power. Clara gasped as the mayor lunged at Cale, swinging a heavy club. Cale sidestepped effortlessly, grabbing the man's wrist and twisting it behind his back. The mayor struggled, his anger turning to panic. Cale's grip was iron, and the sheer force of his presence left no room for resistance. "You've ruled through fear for too long," Cale said, his voice carrying the weight of every injustice committed under Red Rock's sun. "Now you answer for your actions." He forced the mayor to his knees, the documents from the chest spread out before him, proof of corruption undeniable. Outside, the townspeople had gathered, drawn by the confrontation. At first hesitant, they watched in awe as the warrior man, shirtless, muscular, adorned with tribal jewelry, stood as both judge and protector. Fear and respect mingled in their eyes. The lessons of the past hours etched into their hearts. One by one, the mayor's men lowered their weapons, realization dawning that their leader had been exposed. Murmurs filled the air, spreading like wildfire. The mayor had lied, stolen, and manipulated. Red Rock would not tolerate it any longer. Cale released the mayor, letting him collapse onto the floor. Humbled and defeated, Clara stepped forward, clutching the boy. "What now?" she asked quietly, voice trembling. Cale looked out at the town, moonlight catching the sharp lines of his face, the strength of his frame, the calm of his gaze. "Now," he said, "justice is in their hands. They must rebuild, honor the innocent, and protect those who cannot protect themselves. Fear no longer rules Red Rock." The mayor was taken into custody, the townspeople watching him with a mixture of fear and satisfaction. Cale's presence remained, a warning and a promise, until the town realized that strength paired with justice could not be ignored. Slowly, the people began to disperse, whispers of gratitude and awe following the warrior's every step. Clara held the boy close, relief washing over her. She glanced at Cale, who turned toward the horizon, silhouetted against the rising moon. His mission was complete, not for reward, not for recognition, but because the innocent deserved protection and justice demanded courage. The boy spoke softly, his voice trembling. "Will he leave now?" Clara nodded. "He always moves on, but he's changed things forever. We're safe now." Cale gave a small nod, acknowledging them, before mounting his horse. The dust rose in swirls around his powerful form, the moonlight glinting off his bronzed skin and the bone necklaces dangling from his chest as Cale rode away into the night. The town of Red Rock would remember the day courage met cruelty, and justice came in the form of a warrior unlike any they had seen. Clara and the boy watched until the last silhouette disappeared over the distant hills, hearts lighter, the promise of a new dawn resting gently on their shoulders. Red Rock had survived its darkest hours, and though scars remained, hope had been restored. And somewhere on the open plains, Cale Thunderhawk, shirtless, muscular, with long black hair and tribal jewelry, vanished into legend, leaving behind a town forever changed.